The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
It's raining, it's pouring, and Los Angeles has shut down, ladies and gentlemen. It has shut down. The kids' preschool is closed. The freeways are jammed. I'm not sure my wife is ever going to get home from work today, but I still have working internet and power for the time being. So we're going to try to get you a podcast before I'm guessing my whole situation gets shut down over here. We're chugging along. It's Fantasy NBA Today. That's the name of the show. I'm Dan Besbris. We got Kyle McKeown coming up in just a few minutes on today's episode of the pod, which is outstanding and fun. We're going to be digging into, I guess what you'd call like a dumpster fire analysis. The whys, the wheres, the whens, the hows of the biggest dumpster fires in the NBA and what we can take away from them. It's an interesting juxtaposition, actually, because we got into a little bit of that with Josh Millman earlier this week, and his take was, listen, there are some dumpster fires where they're just burning uncontrollably. It doesn't matter what you throw on them, flame retardant, blanket, water, whatever, you're not finding any value. We'll see if Kyle feels likewise about some of these teams. I think we're going to get into, my guess would be, we're going to get into trying to read the tea leaves on bad teams, because a lot of times they do things you don't expect. You're like, well, let's see, what's the best thing this team could do for winning or growth? And then they do other stuff, and that may be this subtle tanking that goes on in the NBA, even early in a season. It's not as obvious, but it's out there and it's happening. Of course, Fantasy NBA Today is a Hoop Ball presentation. It is also brought to you by our title sponsor, our partners over at Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company, at HI Kona Coffee on Twitter, and available on Amazon. That's the easiest way to find those guys. Awesome company. We've been telling you about them all week long, and we're going to continue to tell you about them because the number 2 team in yesterday's DFS contest took home a sweet HI Kona Coffee gift bag. We've upped the number of prizes in our DFS weekly contest. By the way, yesterday's contest, thank you, everybody that got involved on that thing. It's a 50-person contest right now, and we filled it up with about 2 hours to go. So I'm thinking, based on how people tend to sort of rocket into contests over the last hour and a half, we probably could have gone to 60 or 70, and I'm wondering if that's going to be the plan going forward with our pals over at DraftKings. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. We'll have more information on that. I got 11th place in yesterday's, or maybe 12th. I don't know. I was in 9th until LeBron James went nuts and a bunch of teams passed me right at the very end. I was this freaking close to actually winning some money and paying for my own, basically funding the next 5 times I was going to join these contests. But now I'm going to have to dig into the old wallet-a-roo and do it myself. Also on today's podcast, we'll, of course, take a look at Big Wednesday. Less interesting. It's funny the way these things go. We had these short Monday and Tuesday cards where a ton of massive things popped up. New names to keep an eye on. And then Big Wednesday yesterday, there actually weren't that many new names to add to the list. There were some huge lines from notable players, but not that many new things. So I think we'll be able to cover it without doing the whole box score thing. We can actually look at storylines. Then we'll get you set up because, we have to take a look at Thursday. Pretty excited about the fact that our Memphis revenge angle covered easily yesterday. Memphis -2. I liked the Spurs +8. That ended up pushing because they just kept fouling in the last 20 seconds, or we would have been a nice little 2-0 game. Pair of wins could have been. Well, 1-0-1. We'll take it. We'll also look at, of course, the gambling lines tonight. New York and Boston, Phoenix, Portland, Houston, Utah. Just 6 teams in action on this Thursday evening. Wednesday. We're looking back at Wednesday. We're looking at breaking news from this morning. That's the stuff right now. A couple of notes from early today. Wayne Ellington is expected to miss the Heat's next ballgame, as is Hassan Whiteside. And, of course, everybody, I'm sure, sees the personal reasons and attributes it to whatever happened, which was actually poo-poo gate, if you want to call it that. Hassan had to leave the sideline to go drop a deuce at the end of that last ball game. It was nothing more. He got disciplined for not being able to hold it for the last 40 seconds, and apparently everybody's okay. He's actually expecting the birth of a child, so he's leaving the team for awesome reasons. Congratulations to the Whitesides. Don't know exactly what the story was behind Wayne Ellington. Just saw that he was ruled out a moment ago, so if I figure out why, we'll pass that along to you as well. And Gary Harris is out for the Nuggets. The hip stuff, man, that lingers. He's an old man body, that Gary Harris. And figured it would be. I said on either yesterday or the day before, I can't remember which show, that Jamal Murray was in line for a big usage bump. Because this is basically when Jamal went nuts last year, was when Millsap and Harris were out, and it just cleared out all this room, and the room's cleared out again. And obviously, he put up a big line. So let's look at yesterday's games. A couple of things, storylines, as it were. No real storylines for the Warriors other than Steph Curry is back. You guys know how heavily I was betting on Steph. He's the difference maker. He is the engine for that team. They were actually off to a slow start in yesterday's game, and then he just went ballistic. A casual 9 3-pointers, 42 points on an easy 20 shots. Ho-hum. Cleveland side, we're always keeping one very quiet eye on the Cavaliers. Tristan Thompson had a solid game, but he missed a bunch of free throws to sort of tank what was otherwise a nice 19-rebound effort. But then the same story with everybody else, and we'll get into this a bit with Kyle McKeown, because the Cavs are one of those sort of dumpster fiery teams, is can any of these guys actually put the rest of the pieces together? It was nice to see Larry Nance get 24 minutes in yesterday's game, and George Hill sort of got the back seat. And when Nance gets 24 minutes, he's an easy top 100 play. So keep an eye on that. He's heavily owned in Yahoo leagues, so I doubt that you can pick him up, but maybe an opportunity to get him into your lineup if he's currently on your bench. Cedi Osman made some shots. When he makes shots, he's worth starting. When he doesn't, he's not. And more often than not, he doesn't. Colin Sexton, mostly just scoring and nothing else. Jordan Clarkson, same situation. Rodney Hood, same situation. This team needs a passer like a whole. Warriors out-assisted them 29-17. Couldn't create a whole lot from a rebounding standpoint besides Tristan Thompson. And so we're looking. We're open for something. And everybody's like, well, what about Alec Burks? Nah, man, he's got his problems too. Denver, Orlando, we were keeping an eye on Jonathan Isaac, who got 25 minutes in yesterday's game. Not as many as we'd like. He had a really nice first half and then a really quiet second half, which was, I'll admit, a little bit of a pisser. Thought it was going to be a bad game all around for him against a very difficult Nuggets team to play. But he salvaged it. Had a three-pointer, a steal, and a block. Just didn't shoot the ball that well from the field. You know, he's like one made three-pointer away from it being a really nice line. Right? 11, 4, and 2 with a 1-1-1. You're like, okay, I can deal with that. 4 for 11. If he goes 5 for 11 with an extra three-pointer and it's 14, 4, and 2 with 2 threes, a steal, and a block, well, then you're like, oh, awesome line. That's how close guys get sometimes. He's in my lineups now, by the way. He's a full-time starter for me. He's back. He's playing 24 to 30 minutes a game. That's more than enough for someone with his ability. He had a sequence in yesterday's. I know you guys are like, enough with the Jonathan Isaac stuff, but you got to believe me when I tell you, and every other fantasy analyst is saying the same thing, this guy is a ridiculous difference maker. There was a 2.5-minute stretch in the first half when he had a block, a steal that he literally just took out of the opposing player's hand. I don't remember who he was guarding at the time. Someone in the second unit for Denver. It was not one of the big name guys. I think it might have been Monty Morris or Torrey Craig was just standing there with the ball, and Jonathan Isaac just reached out and yanked it right out of their hand. It was a man steal and a deflection. It was in like the span of maybe 5 defensive possessions, a block, a steal, and a deflection. This is what he can do. He's everywhere. Denver eventually overwhelmed them. Big game for Evan Fournier, which he sort of needed because it had been kind of a quiet stretch for him, and due to that low shooting percentage this year, he's having trouble floating the value that would normally be an easy top 100. But I'm not going to get into that right now. I think that's one that sort of levels itself off over the course of the year. Washington and Atlanta, these are two teams that we were watching for multiple reasons, and they played each other. So that was cool. Just got to throw on this game and watch it. When John Wall was a late scratch, it totally changed the complexion of what we were looking for in this game. Because you knew Satoransky was going to have a strong game, he would eventually be the point guard. I know they started Austin Rivers at the point, but come on. Austin Rivers, come on. Satoransky, 14, 4, and 7, 2 steals, a block, and a pair of three-pointers. A very efficient day for him. He's going to be great anytime John Wall is out. But this was a personal absence, and so it doesn't seem like it's going to be a long-term thing. Kelly Oubre, another guy we've been keeping an eye on in case anything ever happens to Otto Porter or Bradley Beal, played 25 minutes and had 19 points, 5 boards, 3 steals, and 2 blocks, and he's been very much worth owning over the last week. He's had 2 big ones in a row after a couple of duds, such as the back-and-forth life of someone who sits towards the end of rosterable categories. But I still think he's a guy that's got this crazy easy path to value laid out before him. It just takes one absence in that wing area for this team, and he's golden. Porter, Beal, Keefe, any of these guys gets moved, Oubre's basically going to have to play 28 or more minutes a night, and then he's must-own. So if you can balance out the good with the bad between now and then, and admittedly, he's a tough guy to use because he'll have a good week where he's a top 75 guy, and then he'll have a bad week where he's like a top 160 guy, and that averages out to about 120. 120 is not the guy that you really want in your not hyper-competitive 12-teamers. If you're in a 12-teamer with like 15 roster slots, yeah, that's a guy that plays for you. If you're in a 12-teamer with a games cap, so you're probably trotting out like 12 guys with a couple dudes that don't play for you, then he's probably one of those dudes that doesn't play for you. But again, if anything pops in front of him, he jumps right into must-start territory. And so, in my mind, that's a guy you have to find a spot for on your roster. Because he's putting up some value right now, and there's this path for him. I don't know what the odds are, 20%, 25%, where something clears out and he becomes like a 6th-round draft pick. That's why we've been spending so much time on him on this podcast. Thomas Bryant is a guy that Brewski brought up on Friday's show last week, and he had 16 and 9 with a steal, a block, and a three-pointer on 5 out of 8 shooting and a 5 for 5 mark from the free throw line. The only problem there is 21 minutes. So to me, this puts him more in that 14-team category because it's really hard to produce in 21 minutes unless you're Nerlens Noel or Rashawn Holmes, meaning someone who's just going to go ballistic for the minutes they're on the floor, and that's not really Bryant's job as the starting center on a team with Beal, Porter, and Wall also in the starting unit. He's a guy that's going to be there to do some cleanup work. Whereas Noel and Holmes in that second unit, they're out there to just crash the boards and pick up fouls and block shots as fast as they can because they're only going to have 14 to 20 minutes to do it. So I do think there's a situation where Thomas Bryant becomes a useful player. I just don't know that it's going to be in regular 12-teamers. Meanwhile, on the Atlanta Hawks side, Kent Bazemore, with Taurean Prince out, he stepped into the void and had a classic Baze line with 7 cash counters, and I think he's locked in here as long as Taurean's out. Jeremy Lin hurt his back after 4 minutes, which sucks because he's been playing really well when he's been healthy. I'm not immediately dropping him. I'm waiting to find out what a low back strain, that could be a day, that could be a week, that could be a month. When we get a timeline, then I'll make a decision on what we do with Jeremy Lin. But right now, nothing yet. I mentioned being a bit shy about using dudes like DeAndre Bembry and Kevin Huerter, and yeah, it's going to be a little bit up and down. That's the bottom line. Now, John Collins, by the way, he's locked in. He's ready to roll now. Brooklyn, I told you guys I was no longer paying any attention to Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, and I'm glad I didn't, because he sucks these days. I know he had 9 boards and 6 assists, but literally nothing else. Don't chase Allen Crabbe. His 7 3-pointer game was almost always followed up by like a 1 or a 0, and Joe Harris, back from injury, he figures to have a role on this team, but again, it's very limited because he, like Crabbe, is mostly a 3-point shooter, and not all that interested. Big night, by the way, for Paul George, 47, 15, and 4. Nice to see him make more than 50% of his shots. That's a big lift for your fantasy team. And Nerlens Noel, a guy we've been keeping an eye on, had a steal, a block, and 9 rebounds. So he's right where he needs to be. Memphis Clippers. This is one where we figured we had a revenge game on our hands, and we did. Jaren Jackson Jr. fouled out in 21 minutes, so that limited his effectiveness, and JaMychal Green picked up the slack. He's kind of teetering right on the brink of standard league value as well. JaMychal Green over the last 2 weeks is sitting at 119, so he's not a must-add guy, but he's someone to keep an eye on. And on the Clippers side, we're always watching Shai, who had a good game. 12, 4, and 4 with 3 steals, a block, and a three-pointer. We said before, if he can hit a 3 and get to 4 assists, then he's a must-start guy. Because he's getting you a steal and a block basically every game from that guard position, which is cool. The problem was that he wasn't doing anything else. It was somewhat inefficient points and steals and blocks. It was a strange collection. But as you add assists and threes, the other guard stats, and if it doesn't kill his percentages, then you got an interesting thing. I still don't know which Gilgeous-Alexander is the real one. He's been better lately. He had 2 really good games, 2 really bad ones, and then now 1 good one again. So the back and forth continue. I suppose that'll happen with rookies. But he is inside the top 100 over the last 2 weeks, so that's a guy that should be in lineups. I don't want to say that he's proving me wrong because I didn't say I didn't think he could do any of this stuff. I just hadn't seen it before. It's part of my reticence with rookies. It's why I wanted to try to talk through SGA on this podcast so often, because people are like, well, either you do or you don't. And that's not the case. There's a gray area in fantasy where I was like, look, I'm probably not going to have this dude on my teams, but it's not because I don't have any interest in him. I just don't know that he's going to do the other stats. And so I was a little slow on the trigger. I'm not kicking myself about it yet. He's had some good ones. He's had some bad ones. He's been useful for those that picked him up. I think he's going to be a decent fantasy player the rest of the way. Probably top 100. Montrez finally had a rare off game. In an odd twist, but basically everybody did. The Clippers were held to 86 points in this thing. Dallas, New Orleans, not really interested in this one. No storylines we were pursuing, so that's cool. Tim Frazier had 7 assists. He would have played a little more, but it was a blowout. I guess that's it. Milwaukee blew out Detroit without Chris Middleton, who was out due to personal reasons, although I don't know that we got the full explanation on that one after getting benched in the previous game. Detroit, by the way, we were sort of watching Stanley Johnson for a little bit. He took 16 shots in this game, but some of that I think was garbage, and I'll keep one eye on him for the foreseeable future, but I don't think it's going to turn into anything. Philly, Toronto, not interested. Charlotte, Minnesota, kind of interested. Couple of reasons. Number one, wondering what would happen with Marvin Williams out with the shoulder sprain. Shoulder sprain. Would Michael Kidd-Gilchrist or Miles Bridges step up and be the man in his absence? And the answer is no. They basically split the minutes down the middle. 23 for MKG, 21 for Bridges, and then, smattering went somewhere else. And for me, that's actually a really good sign, because my hope in all of this is that Marvin can retake his job when he gets healthy. You guys know I love me some old man Marv, and he was just starting to show signs of life right before he went down. He had that one mega dud against Atlanta, 0 points, 6 rebounds, and 1 steal. But around that game, the 4 games that sort of sandwiched that one, where he played 31, 36, 37, and 33 minutes, he had a total in those games of 13 three-pointers over 4 games. So, yeah, pretty good, if that's what you're thinking off the top of your head. That's about 3 and change per game. He was averaging about 15 points a game over those 4 contests. He had a total of 38 rebounds in those 4 games, so over 9 rebounds a game. And he had 1 steal in each one of those games, with the exception of 1. He had the steal in the bad game, and then he missed one of the good ones. And he had 1 block and a total of 3 turnovers. So you're looking at a guy who's about a steal, almost 3 pointers, almost 3 3-pointers, almost 10 rebounds, 15-10. He's not going to average that, mind you. Those are the big games that get blended in with the bad ones. but his minutes were trending up. That was the real key in all of this. Over the first, well, let's say month of the season, if you go back and you look at the first month, he exceeded 30 minutes twice, 2 times. October 20th in Miami, he had 13-6 with 3 blocks and 2 3-pointers in that game. And October 24th in Chicago, where he had 11-8 with 2 steals, a block, and a 3-pointer. Outside of those, he didn't pass 30 minutes until that game against Oklahoma City 2 weeks ago, the one we were just talking about that started his run of strong play. So he was basically a non-factor. But when he gets to that 29, 30-minute mark, the world is his oyster. He just needs to be on the floor long enough as a lower usage guy to fall into those steals and blocks, to fall into those extra rebounds. He's a different guy in 32 minutes than he is in 25. Most players are. Some guys actually get worse when you ratchet their minutes up because the energy level goes down. Marvin is a steady state dude, and the more he's on the floor, the better. So we'll keep an eye on this situation, but if nobody steps up and grabs life by the horns, then he might just slot back into that 30-minute role, and then I'm putting him on all my teams, because you put all that with half a turnover a game, you got yourself a 9-cat asset. Minnesota, by the way, I think we can officially say that Taj Gibson has won that position battle. 25 minutes to Dario's 21. Taj doubled in this ball game. Cat finally wakes up, and what a difference one game makes, huh? Cat was hovering in that 15 to 20 range for most of the season, and then one mega whopper of a game later, he's number 9. Pretty remarkable, huh? Now, of course, it happened to coincide with Marc Gasol and Joel Embiid kind of soiling themselves yesterday, so 2 guys fell back when he was able to move forward, and if you want to say he leaped 5 or 6 spots, yeah, I mean, he leapt like 3, and then 2 dudes fell back behind him. But this is the type of stuff you wanted. 65% shooting, steals, blocks, rebounds. This looks like the guy you drafted in the top 3. Cool. San Antonio, LA, I thought the Spurs were going to cover the 8 points on this coming off a blowout loss, and they had a terrible fourth quarter. They were leading for most of this basketball game. Not a ton of fantasy ramifications, just lamenting the fact that what looked like a win turned into a push at the last second. Rudy Gay bounced back after a goose egg with 31-7. DeMar and LaMarcus Aldridge were both fine, and this is why you're not dealing with the rest of the Spurs. Derek White played only 18 minutes and basically got shut down by the wildly underrated defensive Lonzo Ball. Not sarcasm. He's shutting down point guards in the NBA right now. Lakers found a way. Didn't seem like they were going to win this ball game. They found a way. They got out-rebounded. Spurs made all 20 of their free throws. Lakers, as we know, can't make any. KCP played 28 minutes on the Lakers side. 12 points, 7 boards, a steal, and a couple of threes. Josh Hart, however, hit some big shots down the stretch, and so it's really tough to say anybody's actually going to win that position battle. Don't panic on JaVale McGee. Tyson Chandler just turned out to be a better fit against the bruising ways of LaMarcus Aldridge at the center position. That's a tough matchup for JaVale because he's long and lean, and he can still, despite being a huge dude, get pushed around a tiny bit. Tyson, not getting pushed around too much. Want to remind everybody once again to check out our title sponsor, Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. Want to remind everybody as well that the in-season premium membership is on sale for just $15 for the rest of this week. And another $3 off if you want to use one of our coupons. Again, you can contact me on Twitter or the Hoopball forums if you're hoping to find that $3 coupon, which means you can get the in-season premium pass for just $12. That covers December, January, February, March, and half of April. That's 4.5 months for $12. That's less than $3 a month now. The price is actually going down on a per-month basis. You get a ridiculous amount of things. You get all the live interactive video chats with Brewski and myself and Ethan Noroff and the rest of the team. Micah Patri on the DFS side, Josh, Surio, Eric, Riaz, Hank, Chef, the list goes on and on. Live chats with these guys. You get all of the written articles. You get the tools, the schedule grid, the streaming grid, the dynasty tools, the rankings, the projections. $12, guys, if you use a coupon right now. You got to do it. Don't be a fool. Get the in-season premium pass. And of course, keep playing our DFS contest. As soon as we get next Wednesday's link, I'll make sure to fire that out in all of our channels. Thursday games, only 3 of them. We get a little bit of a break. Thank goodness. Huh? Right? Now we're finally cooking with gas. It was interesting, though. And I think it played itself out in that I was talking about how Monday and Tuesday were so action-packed with new names surfacing that I think I spent like 40 minutes doing recaps, and then Wednesday we had all these games, but it was mostly superstars yesterday, and so the recap only took like 20 minutes on this one. Let's see what Kyle McKeown has to say about some of these dumpster fire teams, huh? I love this guy so much. I really do. We just had such a conversation off air. I love having guys on the podcast that have done shows, and so like all of the struggles that I'm going through, and it also means that I can kind of rest my voice a little bit, just a little bit. Welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, you're talking too much.
I know, I already have. Kyle McKeown, what's up, my man? Welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Dan. I'm really happy to be back. It's been a grip, homie.
Not as long as the previous time, though, right? I actually did a better job of getting you back this time.
What is a calendar?
Harkening back to our pre-show discussion, Kyle, of course, can be found on Twitter at RotoKyleNBA. He writes for Basketball Monster. You do what I started doing, and it's such a freaking undertaking, which is writing about box scores after they happen. I'm exhausted, man. How have you done this for so long?
I think it's just you don't maybe. Well, whatever. I guess it's part of the grind of doing the fantasy stuff is the being invested in the games throughout the night, being invested in the news throughout the day, and then when it's all wrapped up and everybody's just kind of chilling out, you're sitting there dissecting what did it all mean, and that's what's cool. That's one of the things that I do over at Basketball Monster is after the games. If you have a subscription to the site, you can, and the Super Monster subscription, which is access to all the data that I put on the site and all the content I put on the site. You can see all my comments. And Josh Lloyd also does comments on the box scores as well. If you have a Basketball Monster subscription, the actual box scores you can just go look at, and they're sorted like fantasy related
it's so
stats.
Good. Can I please jump in and just tell you how much I love the BBM box score page? It is my go-to because I don't have to watch a frickin' autoplay video. It's just all the numbers right there. That's what we want in this universe. Numbers.
And the player at the top of the box score for each team is the top value player for whatever league settings you have put in. So like it also shows you if you are, if you're on the site and you're a member or whatever, like it shows you what players you have rostered, what players are not rostered in your league. And then it shows the Yahoo ownership percentage right next to all the players too. So you can look and you can be like, oh crap, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is only rostered in 50% of league. Maybe I should go see where if he's available in one of my leagues. Then again, you open up our player profile page and it has all your leagues listed there. And then that's how I like go reference stuff. I'm like, okay, if I want to drop a guy or if I want to go add a particular player, I go to their player page on Basketball Monster and I look at it and I'm like, okay, they're not in that league. I don't have them in that league. They're not rostered in that league. Okay, those are the places I need to go because I have 18 leagues. So it's like I can't just go and cycle through, 18 leagues, like trying to see if they're available in each league. So having all these tools is super awesome for me. I know most people.
How the hell do you have 18? How do you have 18? I increased my total to like 6 or 7 this year, and it's overwhelming. I like every week I rotate one league that I really laser focus on, but if the other ones are going poorly, I might just miss something for a couple of days.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of fortunate because one of the things that I created for content this year is a daily transactions article where every single day I go through each of my leagues and put every single transaction that happens into an article. There's not a lot of me yammering about what it all means. It's more or less just like a reference point to say, here's 18 competitive leagues that people who actually care about fantasy basketball and know quite a bit about fantasy basketball play in. There's expert leagues in there. There is a couple of my just my personal friends leagues or whatever that also give you the perspective of those shallower leagues or the leagues where people aren't as active. So then you're going to randomly see like what Montrezl Harrell got added. What he was supposed to be added like a month ago. And but it gives you that perspective,
Yeah, where you wouldn't even think to check to see if a guy like that would be available. And then there he is. And you're like, how did I well, and you go on to the next one because you can't brood over missed things like that, right? You'd end up missing the next one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so first of all, awesome stuff.
I probably went tangential on that. I don't really know where we started, so you're going to have to bring us back
That's
around.
the beauty of the podcast. We can talk about whatever the hell we want. And I also want to, by the way, give a shout-out to the player ranking page over there, Basketball Monster, which I play around with in the middle of the night when I'm having irritable bowel situations going on. Using
being
the
able
punts.
to toggle the different stats on and off depending on what you want to to either punt or what you just want to see. Like if you're like, okay, if this guy got hurt on my team and now I'm screwed. He was such a big part of my field goal percentage, or he was such a big part of my blocks. Like maybe I should look at punting blocks now. Then you can go and you can look, okay, well, if I'm punting blocks, whose value gets raised or who becomes more usable or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, this is like I shudder to think of how many people in my leagues don't use this particular tool, and it's so much fun to like. I built a punt points assist team just to see what that might look like, and lo and behold, and obviously Anthony Davis is still the number one guy because he's just number one no matter what you do, basically. Number two in that build is Rob Covington, who I've been attempting to mortgage the farm to get onto my fantasy team, and I think perhaps the guy that has him knows how valuable he is in a punt points assist format because he won't give him to me. But it's just like this is the kind of weird nerd fantasy stuff that I like to do in the middle of the night, and it sounds like you do all day and all night as well.
Right, and those basic box scores and player rankings pages are free, so you can go check those out on there. One of the newer things for subscribers that Ken created, the BBM OG original gangster Ken Slight, who designs everything on the site and makes all the tools and whatnot. He created this monster page this year where it's got so much stuff on it, and it's all just on one page, but it brings in all of the players from all your rosters from each league. It lets you see what players Josh and I commented on from the night before, along with the tags that we have on each player where it says must add, maybe add, what league size we recommend, whether or not a player is just a stream player, buy low, sell high, like these a lot of the new tools that Ken created this year for BBM, I'm using them, and I'm still like sending him emails. I'm like, this is so cool, man. Like I'm geeking out at it because it makes running my teams way easier having that stuff. Even being able to go back and be like, dang, man, I commented about dropping that player and I'm going to have to do it. That sucks. Which is why we should probably talk about Jetty Osman and what his situation is.
Yeah, you want to talk about all of the Cavaliers because that's what a mess. I mean, obviously Tristan Thompson's been good lately because they have no other options there, but it's so crazy. It seems like there should be something there, and no matter how many games, and I've watched way too many Cavs games lately, no matter how many Cavs games I watch, there's just, I think the thing I was saying on yesterday or 2 days ago on the podcast was like, there's just a hole in every one of those guys' games that's sort of not fixable. Like Colin Sexton, he doesn't do anything besides score, and Chetty Osman can't shoot at all, seemingly, these days. And Rodney Hood, scoring in threes, and that's it. And George Hill has no usage rate, and Jordan Clarkson, all he does is miss a bunch of shots, but scores at a very high volume. Like, if any one of these guys could just fix the one thing in their game, they could potentially get over that hump, but it doesn't seem like they can. And then you've still got Decker, Nwaba, and Love on the shelf. Is there any reprieve for this club?
I mean, you laid it out there you almost laid it all out there, but then you also have to add in the fact that George Hill just returned. And now we were expecting him to step into a limited role with Colin Sexton or behind Colin Sexton in his return, or at least I was. And yet when we're told he had a 20-minute limit last night on Wednesday, George Hill goes out and plays 35, 36 minutes. Like, so now we don't know what to believe. We don't know. And you pointed out Nwaba is still going to be coming back. Sam Decker's still going to be coming back. They just added Alec Burks to the guard or wing rotation as well. And Alec Burks, another guy who you look at and you go, well, he's an expiring contract. Sure, they're going to want to get a look at him, but are they really going to commit big minutes to him? okay, so Alec Burks comes in and he's playing about 26 minutes a night. And then all at this time that you think, okay, Alec Burks comes back or comes into the mix, and George Hill comes back and he's playing shooting guard or whatever in those shooting guard minutes. You would think Rodney Hood would lose the minutes. But no, it's not Rodney Hood. Rodney Hood's played like 35 minutes the last couple games. So it's just I don't know what's going on. And even the Tristan Thompson stuff with him playing 35 minutes a game or whatever it's been lately. Why? I get it. He's going out there. He's playing well. He's getting rebounds. But for this Cavaliers team, why is Tristan Thompson playing 35 minutes a night? If you want to display to other teams, hey, look, this guy can go out there. He can rage for 28 minutes, 26 minutes. He can get your rebounds. He can do this. Or if you're trying to show teams like, look, he's healthy enough to play these minutes, cool. But at some point, it's going to go away, right? And that's the way I look at it. At some point, all of this Tristan Thompson production is going to go away. But what's funny is it's either going to go away because they just go away from him and he's still on the roster, or he gets traded. Who's going to trade for him? Who looks at Tristan Thompson and goes, that's what we need on our team? I may be underthinking that, but it's hard for me to imagine a team thinking Tristan Thompson's worth bringing on based on his salary and based on what limited offerings he gives you. Not only that, what team's going to trade for him and play him 35 minutes? So Nobody. These expectations of nothing makes sense in regards to kind of what there doesn't seem to be a clear plan about who they're going to be going forward. And maybe that's fine. Maybe just getting as many assets as you can and working it is all good, and trying to build up players' value so you can flip them in other trades to get more assets. You know what? That's fine. Because as much as I'm frustrated by things like Cedi Osman's minutes getting a little bit squished, he still played 28 minutes last night. So they're still trying to develop their guys. So to have so much consternation, I probably shouldn't, but it's recognizing that there are so many guys on this team. They're all ball handlers. They're all guys who do better when the ball is in their hands, and they're not great passers, as you pointed out, which just leads to this whole thing where it's there's no team ball. It's just all one-on-one, who can do the best scoring. And a lot of the times that's going to be Jordan Clarkson, which is just weird.
It's super weird, and I think there was a moment 2 or 3 days ago, or maybe it was, I don't know, the days blend together. It might have been a full week ago at this point, where I sent a tweet out that was I've basically given up on trying to figure out what the right thing is for these teams to do, and just started saying, all right, what are they actually doing? And right now, when you look at the Cavs, what they should be doing is, as you just said, not really running in parallel with what it seems like they ought to be doing, or what they actually are doing. A ton of Tristan Thompson. My only guess there is that he's on the floor because they'd be getting blown out without him otherwise. And maybe that's he's salvaging so many of their missed bricks on the offensive end. They're just look, we can't, it would be one and done and we'd shoot 30% for the game and be down 25. But yeah, if we're trying to move this guy situation, it makes no sense. He has another $18 million due to him next season, so it's going to be hard enough as it is, and a hurt Tristan Thompson would be a very difficult thing to move. I'm with you. I mean, Cedi Osman is a guy who seems like they really wanted to sort of force-feed him opportunity, but he's got to figure out a way to get that shooting percentage up from 37. It has to come up at some point, right? Nobody shoots 37%. That's a power forward. Or small forward, power forward, at least.
Okay, look at this damn team. There's no spacing on this team, right?
Not much.
Because everybody who has the ball, that's where all the focus goes, because nobody's passing it. Who's the best passer on the team? Probably Cedi Osman. But they don't use him in that role because they have so many other guys whose best asset is actually being an on-ball guy or handling the ball. So there's just too much duplicative talent on this team. It's a cluster, and in some ways it's frustrating, but in other ways, you know what? Larry Drew's he's actually doing a pretty good job trying to get most of the right guys the minutes they deserve. I just have a lot of brain brick. My brain just turns into concrete when I try to understand why there's this disconnect between what a lot of fans see in Larry Nance and his potential to be a hybrid power forward center in today's NBA, a Draymond Green type of guy who can do a little bit of everything, versus and help you be a dominant team, versus all of these teams that actually have Larry Nance and seem to like him because he's in the rotation all the time, but they don't know what position he is. And they can't commit to what position he is. And I just don't get it. Like, it should be really easy to put Larry Nance into most lineups because he can guard 5 freaking positions. And in today's NBA, that's exactly what you want.
I got 2 other teams I want to bug you about because they're also teams that it's kind of like this, well, what should they be doing and what are they doing? And the first one is the Atlanta Hawks. I admit I can't quite wrap my head around whatever's going on there. It's sometimes young, sometimes old, mostly just getting clobbered on a nightly basis. We've seen more Jeremy Lin, which admittedly I'm okay with. You know, I like to build my old man squad because Trae Young is getting steamrolled on a nightly basis. We're seeing more Kevin Huerter lately. Alex Len keeps popping up and then disappearing in favor of the older Dwayne Dedmon. Taurean Prince hasn't really been able to get it going so far this year. How do we see things shaking out for the Hawks moving forward?
I just don't think TP's more than a role player. Like, he's tried to become more on that Hawks team, but he's shown over the last couple of years that he's streaky. He's either really good or he's really crap.
Yeah.
For Trae Young, he's what we thought he was. We knew he was going to struggle with his field goal percentage on nights where it's just not going in. And I mean, not just struggle, but epically, historically have some issues there, most likely. And it's played out that way. That's fine. You drafted Trae Young late in your draft, most likely. And you drafted him knowing that you were planning on punting field goal percentage. If you didn't, then you should be looking to trade him. If you want to be competitive in field goal percentage, you should be looking to trade Trae Young. If you have Trae Young rostered in a rotisserie league, he should be on your bench, and you should be trying to trade him because in a rotisserie league, I mean, you just can't roster that guy because he's such a poo-poo in your field goal percentage. So
well said.
Yeah. So, but John Collins is the way, the truth, and the light for that team. If you know, hopefully you had John Collins and stashed him on your IR to begin the season. Omari Spellman's interesting as a deeper league target or someone to just have on watch list because eventually the bottom's going to fall out from Alex Len, or not Alex Len, but Dwayne Dedmon. Because we already saw it fall out from Alex Len, and eventually that'll be Omari Spellman that's getting minutes there later, and which has been great. I mean, it's funny that this process 2.0 isn't getting the flack that the process 1.0 got in Philly because they really are leaning hard into these younger players. I mean, I've been surprised at how much time we did see Spellman play already early this season, and that's surely going to come back up later this year as the Hawks just get more and more committed into their youth movement. Kevin Huerter is a good freaking player. And he's one of the guys who you look at kind of like Mikal Bridges and you say, whoa, these guys have the potential to put up some defensive stats, hit some threes. Huerter's showing off his passing abilities in ways that were, I mean, to me, a little bit unexpected, at least the level that he's doing it. Huerter kind of plays with not the same pace, but like, Huerter plays with a good pace. He looks like he's going to be a competent NBA player for a long time. He's already shooting really efficiently from 3-point land right now. And there's a lot of things to like about Huerter. He's somebody who I like as a stash candidate, especially in 14-team leagues, but somebody you definitely keep a close eye on in 12-team leagues in case you decide, you know what, I'm high enough in my standings. I'm going to grab this Huerter kid because later in the season, when Jeremy Lin's traded, Kent Bazemore's not on the team, Taurean Prince is just kind of floundering, we're going to see Trae Young, we're going to see Kevin Huerter, we're going to see John Collins and probably Omari Spellman at some point just dominating a lot of those minutes for the Hawks later.
Last team to talk about, the New York Knicks. They got a fresh lineup for you every week. It's nice to keep it fresh, right? You got something new to look at. My take on this team right now is, like, don't chase, because whoever scores a bunch of points one night is going to disappear the next. Is that a safe play to go?
Yeah, I mean, just look at the way it's going. Right now, we've had 3 good games of Damian Dotson. Before that, we had a couple good games of Alonzo Trier. Emmanuel Mudiay is having a couple good games right now. Now, the Mudiay situation's a little bit different because they've just they've, like, what's it called where you just throw somebody out of the village?
Excommunicate.
Yeah, sure. That one's religious, but I was thinking more like whatever. You're
exile.
Exile.
Yeah.
Exiled. Same. You just wanted to exile him spiritually, which I'm not ready to do yet. But anyways, Frank's not playing, man. Like, that's just weird.
Yeah.
The fact that, and even not only is Frank not playing, but Trey Burke missed the last game, and he only played like a minute in the game before that, and Frank didn't play. So until Frank Ntilikina gets traded, and that, I mean, you just look at Emmanuel Mudiay right now, and you're starting to say, dang, the opportunity just might be there. The Knicks just might be deluding themselves into thinking that Emmanuel Mudiay is the answer at point guard for them in the future.
Yikes.
Even if the future is next week, it's stupid. But, it's not stupid. You take, when you're in the situation that the Knicks are in, you take those flyers, you look at all these different players who maybe didn't hit their peaks, but who had higher upside than what they actualized. And that's why you're seeing stuff like from Noah Vonleh or whatever. But for the most part, for like all of these Knicks players, look at them as stream options. So you grab them, it's a flyer, you put them into your lineup for a couple games. If it pans out and they end up having good value the way that we've seen Enes Kanter have consistent value, then cool. But for the most part, you're looking at it like any of the 7 or 8 guys who have had a stretch of good value for the Knicks, it dries up. So other than Enes Kanter and Tim Hardaway, I mean, I don't really think there's anybody we can count on that team for consistent minutes, role, and value.
My sweet Kyle McKeown at RotoKyleNBA of Basketball Monster. I promised I would get you in and out on this thing. I know we could talk for another half an hour, but I'm going to let you continue your day. Thank you so much, my man. And I promise I'm going to get you back on soon again.
Can you just quickly tell me, Jeremy Lin, is he okay to add right now in 12-team leagues because of the insane production he's doing in limited action? Or
I'm good with him. I like Jeremy. I like him. He was a guy I drafted in a number of spots, and then he got off to that weird start. But a report came out that he just wasn't healthy. He didn't have his explosiveness back. He's just so much better than Trae Young on the floor. I know that you want to develop the young guy, but too many games where Trae is getting crushed, and so I think they're trying to sort of protect the ego to some degree. So yeah, I mean, you take a guy who's just picking on other people's backups. I'm okay with it.
I'm sure the Hawks are really just waiting for, based on the way that Lin's played, they're just I'm sure they're kind of biding time, saying, "Hey, when's somebody gonna offer us a first round pick for this guy?" And then we'll give him up. And that's intriguing. Like that's what's intriguing to me about Jeremy Lin, is the idea that if he gets traded to another team, because he's not going to take Trae Young's role.
No,
he's not going to take Kevin Huerter's role at shooting guard. Now I think it's possible Taurean Prince gets moved, and the Hawks look at Jeremy Lin and they say, "We want you to start next to Trae Young next year, and we're going to start Huerter at small forward." I doubt it, but that's one of the things about Jeremy Lin, and saying like, okay, look, he's putting up really nice production in limited action. It's a little bit less reliable because there's the limited minutes, but you grab him right now and you kind of almost hang on to him when he has those crappier games that just don't pan out well and doesn't play big minutes because Trae Young happens to be hot, or the team doesn't get blown out and Jeremy's not getting a bunch of burn. Whatever that is, you hold on to him through those little bumps if they're little enough, because of the possibility of him having even increased value later. And that's not to say that you should be stashing a lot of different guys or whatever, but and you definitely need to acknowledge where you are in the standings in determining that. But I'm going to digress because you were already trying to get the hell out of here.
No, you're good. You're good. I love talking more stuff. I just didn't want to take any more of your time up. If you've got it, I'm taking it, and I'm with you, man. Jeremy Lin, he's a nice one, too, because over the last month, he's a top 80 9-cat guy, and better than that in 8-cat, and you're sitting on someone who could potentially see more. That's in 21 and a half minutes. I mean, if he gets a bump up to 24 or 25, it's nice to have a stat magnet on your team. I guess let's just leave it at that. He's a guy that piles up stats very quickly, especially on a bad team and especially against the second stringers on the opposition team. So, yeah, I'm for it. I'm with you on that one. I like Jeremy Lin, and I've added him in a couple spots already, actually. So there you go.
And then I'm going to ask you about one more guy, John Isaac.
Oh, man, I got to sit on him. I know it hasn't looked great so far, but I can't drop that. I can't. That's all I got.
I completely agree. Like, you know,
Can't drop it.
It's one thing if you are outside of the, if you're far down in your rotisserie standings, it's a shallow league. There's better options on the wire. You need to look for really good stream options to get guys who are making spot starts and going to have the potential for a big night unexpectedly or something like that. It's one thing if you're trying to really work your team to get back into contention in a shallower league, but to drop Jonathan Isaac when he's currently healthy. Currently, his minutes are going up. I think you pointed that out in the last podcast. And the Magic have said, like, we're going to bring him off the bench while he's still on this minutes limit as we make sure that his ankle gets healthy. Like, I get that people want to look at the production he's already had this year and try to draw like long-term conclusions from that. You know, he's not getting the steals. How is he going to get the steals and all this kind of stuff? And it's like, has he gotten steals before? Has he done it before? Has he done it in a crazy way, in an exorbitant rate that most people don't do it? Has he done the same thing for the blocks, at least in that pairing? He's done all these things, and the opportunity is going to be there. And he's had road bumps, and there will come a time where you do have to decide whether or not to continue to roster him. But for the most part, Jonathan Isaac has remained a hold this whole season.
Yep.
Because of his potential, because of the fact that he could go out and get you 20 steals and 20 blocks in a week if he has 4 games.
Yeah, absolutely. There's like 2 or 3 guys in the entire NBA that can win you 2 defensive categories in a head-to-head week and can get you like 4 or 5 roto points in a season in those 2 categories, and he's one of them. So you can't bail on it, and we've seen flashes of it as well. So I'm with you. And you know what? As awful as it's been to this point, and it's been not great, you know, with the injury and some slow games in there. As terrible as it's been, he's like number 160 in 9-cat, which in deeper leagues is actually startable, and in 12-team leagues he's like 2 good games away from being startable. So it's not as bad as everybody thinks. He's just not scoring a ton, but like it's there, and like you said, the minutes are on the rise. So yeah, I can't drop that. He's on my bench, but you know, in leagues where you have unlimited games and everybody's playing, he's not killing you in those either. So absolutely, total agreement. Kyle, my man, I love it when we get to do this thing. Next time I'm setting aside the full hour, we're doing the whole show. Is that okay?
That's fine, brother.
Nice. He is the great Kyle McKeown. He is he's a podcast man. He's an audio guy. He's a guy that allows me to rest my vocal cords, and nothing makes me happier than that. Thank you, Kyle. Thanks
for letting me come on here and talk, because most of my day is spent just saying like crazy things to my dog.
Sitting in pajama pants in a bedroom, I know all about it.
I still wear jeans most of the time, but I like that you gave me the visual of how you're rocking.
Yep.
Final tip: if you a lot of people go to the Starbucks and they get like a caramel macchiato, or as my dad says, a macchiato. If you want a healthier drink from the coffee shop, get a chai tea latte with almond milk. It's about 180 calories, and it's delicious. It'll mend the roads of your heart.
There you go. Kyle McKeown, pro tip. Thanks, my man.
No problem, brother. Have a great day.
The man, the myth, at RotoKyle NBA. Check him out. Great tools over at Basketball Monster, by the way. In fact, most of the time when I'm doing these recaps, it is their box score page that I have up in front of me. It is a dream of mine to build a page similar to that one. Perhaps over here at the Hoob. But for the time being, that's your box score page, man. That's where you got to go. If you're clicking through one game at a time on Yahoo or ESPN or whatever, you're wasting time. And for me, I try to do it quietly, so I don't want something auto-playing on every freaking page I go to. Stupid autoplay. New York and Boston, Celtics favored by 13. They've been playing better, but they've also been playing good teams, and this one has the smell of a letdown game on it. So ever so slightly into the Knicks. Not enough for me to make a call on it. Phoenix still without Booker and Warren. They are 13.5-point underdogs in Portland. This is a cakewalk game if you're the Blazers. If you're trotting out some of your Phoenix guys, understand who might see the garbage time. So Rashawn Holmes has a pretty good profile for this game. I don't know about the 2 point guards. Elliot Kobo, DeAnthony Melton. It's going to be whoever plays better, most likely. And then Mikal Bridges probably has to play 28 minutes because Josh Jackson sucks. So fantasy stuff, yeah, I mean, you're looking at it, but you're also staring down the barrel of a possible blowout. Houston, Utah. Utah by 2. They've been playing a little bit better. Houston has been scuffling a tiny bit. I'm not touching any of these games today from a betting standpoint. And Houston, Utah from a fantasy standpoint, there's sort of nothing there. We got a pretty good idea what's going on with these two teams. So fantasy-wise today, you're watching Phoenix to see if any of these young guys can actually kind of grab the reins, do a little usage rate stuff, and separate themselves from the pack. And, of course, with the Knicks, you're always watching this team. Emmanuel Mudiay does have a path with Trey Burke probably out for about 2 weeks, I would guess. I would actually probably stream Mudiay, although this is a tough matchup against Boston. He's going to be dealing with Kyrie or Marcus Smart. Sounds like Jaylen Brown is back, by the way. We'll get to that in a moment. Elsewhere on the Knicks side, I think you can look at Noah Vonleh. He's not, what you want to think about when you start Vonleh is the matchup. And for the Celtics, I'm not even 100%. They mess around with their starting lineup. They might go with an Aaron Baines, Al Horford front court, which is probably good for Vonleh because Horford doesn't draw a ton of fouls. Neither one of those guys does. My only concern would be if the Celtics went to a smaller power forward and tried to run Vonleh out to the perimeter. Could he get into foul trouble there? That's the only thing that holds him back. He ends up fouling people while fighting for rebounds and chasing people around, but I would use him. Enes Kanter, I think I would use, and then obviously we talk about Mitchell Robinson plenty on this podcast. On the Boston side, the dude I'm watching is Marcus Smart because he had 2 what I think you could call serviceable games with Jaylen Brown out. How many games in a row has he actually been okay? He's been okay for about 4 games here for Marcus. But to me, it comes down to minutes and opportunity. And with Jaylen Brown out, both of those were higher. He played 28 minutes in that last game in Minnesota, a win, mind you, and took 4 total shots. That's tough. He's a 3-point steals guy, but if he's not engaged, it limits the effectiveness. So I know a lot of people were sort of racing out and picking him up and hoping that it would stick. I'm still seeing him available in enough spots where I didn't make that lightning quick move to go get him. But if you're a team that needs threes and steals, he can do that. He's just not going to ever really be a volume guy. So he might only score 7 points a game, which is what he's at right now, but he's averaging 1.5 steals per game, which is, I would venture to say, pretty good. So if he stays in that starting lineup and he still puts up the decent minutes and he gets you a couple threes, a few steals, maybe 5 assists or whatever, 4 or 5, you could think about it. He's definitely on my watch list for tonight and a guy that I might add if things go the right way. And that's your short Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. Nice, easy one to profile on today's show. Tomorrow, we wrap up the week here on Fantasy NBA Today with a 3 p.m. Pacific time live show. Aaron and myself will profile the week at hand. It's been a big one, man. We got a lot of things to cover on tomorrow's show. And, of course, we'll tweet out the link to the YouTube chat room so that you guys can post your questions ahead of time, and we will get to as many of those as possible at the tail end of that show. It's a lot of fun. We always have a good time on Fridays. Thanks again to Kyle McKeown for popping on today's pod. I am Dan Besbris. This is Fantasy NBA Today, a hoopball presentation brought to you by Hawaiian Isles, Kona Coffee Company, and a member of the Dash Radio Nothing But Net Network. Enjoy your Thursday, friends and confidants. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.